and play on 2nd and 10. That's his youth right there.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
So today I'll be reacting to the final college football playoff rankings for the 2025 season. So I've got my rankings here and the college football playoff rankings. My rankings are how I would have done it going by the rules for the college football playoff this year. So, of course, I have Indiana number one, like the CFP, because they're the only undefeated team, and they have the best win this season against Ohio State. And even though I picked Ohio State to win this game, if you watched my prediction video, then you know that I did say that if Indiana's defensive line could have a huge game, they would have a chance, and that's exactly what happened. Indiana's defensive line dominated and controlled this game. Julian Sayin, who I actually thought played okay, and this one was sacked almost as many times in this game as he had been sacked all season before it. And Indiana held Ohio State to just 58 yards rushing and 2.2 yards per run. And the only time that Ohio State actually put together a drive and got points out of it was that one field goal drive, because that one touchdown that they got was because of a 1st and goal that they got from a Fernando Mendoza interception. But Mendoza, I thought, played pretty well overall in this game, and he probably is going to win the Heisman Trophy. But it was really about the defenses, most of all, on both teams. Ohio State's defensive line dominated Indiana too. They held Indiana to just 118 yards rushing and 3.5 yards per run. The difference was Indiana was able to make a few more big plays than Ohio State was. And I know Ohio State missed that field goal from 27 yards away that would have put the game in overtime. But you have to remember that earlier in that game, Indiana also missed a field goal. So Indiana was just the better team in this game. But this game was so close that if Indiana and Ohio State were to play again, and I think there is a good chance they could play again in the national championship, Ohio State would have a good chance of winning. But Kirk Cignetti, who won the Coach of the Year award last season, I now think should win it again this season. He's really done the impossible at Indiana. He's turned what used to be one of the biggest jokes of a program, not just in the Big Ten, but in all of college football, into one of the best programs in college football and Big Ten champions in just 2 years. This is really the most impressive turnaround in college football history. Even more impressive than what Lane Kiffin did at Ole Miss. And Cignetti, unlike Kiffin, is smart enough to stay at the program that he's built up. But I would give Georgia the highest spot of Georgia, Texas Tech, and Ohio State. Because even though if Georgia and Ohio State were to play now, I would pick Ohio State. Georgia just won the SEC, which is the best conference in the country still. And Georgia won it in a dominant way. Their defense is peaking at the right time. Their defense looked like it did in those two national championship teams. They made Alabama's offensive line look like an FCS offensive line. They held Alabama to just -2 yards rushing. Even though this was by far not Ty Simpson's best game. You can't blame this loss on him because he had no time to throw. The Georgia pressure was so heavy that the Georgia defensive line was in his face nearly every snap. And then the few times that he did have time to throw, his wide receivers couldn't get open because the coverage by the Georgia secondary was so good. And Georgia does have more good wins than Ohio State does. Ohio State has only two good wins against Texas and Michigan, and Georgia beat Texas also, and they also beat the Ole Miss, who's a better team than Michigan, and then Alabama too, who I think is also a better team than Michigan, and then Georgia Tech. I think that was a pretty good win too. And Texas Tech, I would put it three because they did win their conference and they have the same record as Ohio State. And even though the Big 12 is not as good of a conference as the Big 10 is anymore, Texas Tech won their conference championship game in a dominant way, like Georgia did. Their defense dominated this game. Outside of that first possession, BYU couldn't do anything offensively. They held BYU to just 137 yards passing, and BYU is a good running team, but Texas Tech held them to just at 63 yards rushing and at 2.1 yards per run. And well, Texas Tech's offense didn't have a great day. BYU has good defense too, so I actually thought they played pretty well in this game. And I would really be surprised if it's not one of these top four teams that wins it all. Because, well, there are some other teams that I do think have a chance at it. These seem like the four most complete teams. Ohio State, Indiana, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma seem to have the four best defenses in the country. But Oklahoma doesn't have near as good an offense as Ohio State or Texas Tech or Indiana. And Georgia, their defense seems to be close to Oklahoma's, and they have a much better offense than Oklahoma does. I disagree with having Oregon at five. I would put either Ole Miss or Texas A&M at five and the other one at six because them and Oregon all have the same record. And Ole Miss and Texas A&M have both played a tougher schedule than Oregon has. And Ole Miss's best win against Oklahoma and Texas A&M's best win against Notre Dame are both better than Oregon's best win against USC. So I would put Oregon at seven. But I would put Ole Miss at five and A&M at six because Ole Miss did beat Oklahoma by more than Texas A&M beat Notre Dame. And I would put Texas at number eight. Texas missing out on the college football playoff, I think is going to make teams more hesitant now to schedule big games. Because Texas, nobody else has three wins as good as they do against Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is for sure one of the best teams in college football, and Texas just beat them by 10 points. And I would put Texas ahead of Oklahoma because they didn't just beat Oklahoma, they dominated Oklahoma, and Oklahoma beat Alabama. And likely the only thing that's made the difference in Texas and Oklahoma's record is Texas scheduling Ohio State. Now, I know you're probably thinking Texas should have won that game. And Oklahoma, I know they scheduled a tough non-conference game too against Michigan and won, but Ohio State is a much better team this year than Michigan is. And the Texas Ohio State game was at Ohio State, and not only did Texas get within a touchdown of them, there were two times where Texas could have kicked a short field goal, but went for it and couldn't convert either time, or Texas would have had a chance to put that one in over at time. But Oklahoma should be ahead of both Miami, Notre Dame, and Vanderbilt, who are also 10-2, I think, because Oklahoma has played the toughest schedule in the country. So for them to be 10-2, I'd say for sure they're one of the 10 best teams in college football, and they have more ranked wins than all of those other three teams that I just mentioned that do. And I would put Alabama ahead of Notre Dame and Miami, because even though Alabama just got blown out in the SEC championship, you can't really punish them for having to play that extra game. And Alabama has played a tougher schedule than both Miami and Notre Dame have. And Alabama has two great wins against Georgia and Vanderbilt. And I know that Georgia win probably doesn't mean as much anymore because Georgia just beat them, but still, but Miami, they have only one great win against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is throwing a fit and refusing to play in a bowl game because they got left out of the college football playoff. But they had a weak schedule. And I know they scheduled two big games, but they lost both of them. Should have won one of them. And the only good win they have is against Southern Cal, and not even that was a huge win. Notre Dame is going to have to get over their fear of joining a conference, because if you're in a conference, you have a chance to make up for that with the conference championship game. And that Alabama Georgia game was really closer than the final score would make you think, because Georgia only had two long scoring drives, because that first Georgia touchdown they got from a block punt that put them near the red zone, and then that last Georgia touchdown they got because that Kalen DeBoer made the stupid decision to go for it inside his own at 20 that put Georgia 11 yards from the end zone when Alabama couldn't convert. But Miami seems like a team that would have a chance to make a run at a national championship. They've got an elite defense and a great quarterback and good lines of scrimmage and two really good coordinators. Mario Cristobal, though, I think is probably going to be the one problem that gets in the way of them being able to make a run at a national championship. But 11 and 12 is why this rule of the five highest ranked conference champions having to get a college football playoff spot has got to go. Because Tulane and James Madison both have no chance of even winning a playoff game. Ole Miss is going to destroy Tulane, and Oregon is going to destroy James Madison. Ole Miss already played Tulane, and they won 45-10. The game was over long before the clock ran out. Now, me being an Ole Miss fan, in a way, I do like seeing them play Tulane because that'll give them an easy playoff win. But this isn't good for the college football playoff having these kind of teams in it. And I'm not even trying to pick it Tulane or James Madison, because they are really good teams for the level they play at. But this isn't fair to the Power Four teams or to the Group of Five teams. The Group of Five needs to have their own playoff. I would actually put Miami at 11 and Notre Dame at 12 if I got to choose. But going by the rules for the college football playoff, I would put Duke in instead of James Madison, because even though Duke does not deserve a college football playoff spot either, and they're not that good, and they have no chance of winning a national championship either if they got in. At least they did win a Power Four conference. But of course, I would put Tulane still ahead of Duke because Tulane beat Duke. But James Madison, the Sun Belt Conference that they play in, I think is the worst group of five conference, and James Madison, they don't have any Power Four wins and have only played one Power Four team, and that was against Louisville. And they did compete in the game, but still lost by 2 touchdowns. And Louisville, well, they're a decent team. They're not near a college football playoff team. But that'll be it with this video. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.